Today I'll show you how to paint this romantic oil landscape. It's not hard, you will be able to do it. This is a commission. I'm restoring missing fragments for an old herbalist shop in Barcelona. You might recognize the place from the movie Perfume. And while you watch the brush run over this wooden panel which I built myself, by the way, I'll share some of the compliments artists secretly hate, the ones that sound kind, but quietly take a bite out of the work. I'm Alex, a restorer in Barcelona. Tea or coffee ready? Let's begin. The first anti-compliment: your painting is so beautiful, just like a photo. Sounds great, right? Except to a painter, it's like telling a chef their dish tastes like instant noodles. Oil painting is valued for the breath in it, the unpredictability of the brush stroke, the way light grazes the surface, the personal filter that reshapes reality. A photo freezes a moment. A painting tells you how it felt. When someone says just like a photo, they erase the choices, the mood, the soul, and leave only the mechanical skill. Another charmer: I love the colors. On the surface, sweet, but it can land like the tubes of paint you bought are nice. As if the color harmony just happened, without thought about balance, mood, or rhythm in the composition. You start wondering if they saw the brushwork, the movement, the way those colors actually talk to each other, or just the fact that one happens to match their curtains. Then there's, my niece paints too. Translation: this looks like something a beginner could do. Often said by the same people who dismiss Picasso as scribbles. Google Picasso's early work, you'll be surprised. Years of study and experimentation reduced to, you're on par with someone who just bought their first marker. Or, you must have been born with talent. Sounds flattering, but it politely deletes every hour you've ever worked. Talent is just the seed. The tree is built from years of practice, scraped off paint, and failed attempts. Sometimes I think talent was invented to avoid acknowledging someone's effort. Here's a sly one: you make it look so easy. It's meant as admiration, but it implies that the end result just happened. They didn't see the canvas last week when it looked like a bad soup of 3 colors. Easy usually means the prep work was invisible, which is the point, but it still shrinks the struggle to a magic trick. Another favorite: I like the sketch better. And maybe they mean it, sketches do have electricity, but it's hard not to hear the life got painted out of it. The challenge is keeping that spark in the finished piece, letting the edges breathe and the underpainting peek through. Or the modern classic: which app or AI did you use? Nothing like erasing the fact that it smells like turpentine in here for a reason. The joy of oil is that you can change your mind with your hands, not with undo. Sometimes you hear, it's so nice and bright, which can mean, I noticed the surface level cheerfulness. But brightness isn't just pigment, it's contrast, value shifts, and how they pull the eye around the scene. And the polite dagger: you're lucky. From the outside, it looks like luck. From the inside, it's hours at the easel, like right now. And while I've been telling you all this, the painting has been quietly waking up. The light in the foreground is softer, the sky has started speaking to the water, and the whole thing is breathing a little more. But don't get comfortable, we still have plenty of layers to go, and plenty more compliments that will make any artist smile, very, very tightly. It's very decorative. This one's a sneaky little dagger. Decorative can mean pleasing, or it can mean I see it as wallpaper. It ignores the story, the pacing of shapes, the intention, and reduces it to something that matches the furniture. That would make a great print. Again, could be a compliment or a gentle way of saying, this would be nice. Flattened, mass-produced, and sold for $12.99 at the mall. Not exactly the dream. I love that style, it's so trendy right now. Trendy is fine if you're designing sneakers, but for an artist, it can feel like you've been filed under temporary fashion. It skips over the personal voice and suggests you're just riding a wave. It reminds me of something I saw on Pinterest. That something was probably a photo of someone else's work. It's basically saying, I've seen this mood board before, instead of seeing you in it. By the way, sometimes you ask me, do I use thinner or oil? I use both, but let me share a little cocktail I swear by. You'll need linseed oil, refined or boiled, plus some damar varnish and turpentine. Mix it all until it's nice and smooth. and you're ready to paint. Back in the academy, we used to call it the Trinity. There are so many little details that can make or break your experience. The right brushes, good paint, the right mediums to mix or thin it, proper canvas material, and even something as basic as how you hold the brush or where you stand while painting. Some of these things I learned in art school. Some I picked up from other painters, some came with time. But the one thing I know for sure, never stick to just one teacher. Learn from many and eventually you'll find your own voice. If you're curious, I put together a painting course. It's for beginners, but also for anyone who wants to ground their practice in real technique. It costs about as much as filling up your car, but way less depressing. You pay once and get access for as long as you need. Links in the description. There's another myth I hear a lot. A real artist always paints from life. Sounds noble, but if that were true, half the masterpieces in art history wouldn't exist, including everything painted from sketches, memory, or imagination. Sometimes the life you paint from is a photograph, a fragment of a dream, or a memory you're trying to hold before it fades. Some people also believe a good painting has to be realistic. If that were the case, the Museum of Modern Art would be empty, and Van Gogh would have been stuck doing passport photos. Realism is a style, not a measure of quality. A painting can be stylized, abstract, even flat, and still hit you right in the chest. There's also the classic, the brush is the most important thing. Not really. The most important thing is what's in your head. Sure, a high-end brush is nice to hold, but a skilled painter could make a great piece with a stick and some string. Without intention, even the most expensive brush just makes expensive brush strokes about nothing. Another common one, oil lasts forever, acrylic doesn't. The truth? It depends on the materials and technique. There are acrylic paintings from the 1960s that look brand new, and oil paintings from the 19th century that nearly fell apart before restoration. I also hear, the more detail the better. More detail doesn't automatically mean more value. Sometimes 2 confident brushstrokes say more than 100 tiny ones. The eye also needs places to rest. If everything is equally busy, the painting stops breathing. And then there's the idea that white paint should always stay perfectly white. It almost never does. White interacts with everything around it. Perfect tube white often looks fake, like a cut-out hole in the painting. A lot of people think old paintings darkened because the paint aged. More often, it's the varnish that yellowed, not the paint itself. Remove the old varnish carefully, and you'll sometimes find colors as bright as the day they were painted. Another favorite, an artist has to wait for inspiration. If you wait for inspiration, you might not pick up a brush for a year. Professionals know inspiration comes during the work, not before it. Sometimes you just start moving paint around, and then the mind switches on. And then there's, a good painting should appeal to everyone. Impossible. Even Monet and Rembrandt have haters. If everyone politely says, that's nice, it's often a sign you didn't touch anyone deeply at all. Some people insist a good painting should be easy to understand. But sometimes the point is mystery to make you linger, think, and even feel a bit uncomfortable before the meaning clicks. Another myth I hear, a true artist never adjusts for a client. In reality, even the masters took commissions with very specific requirements. The trick isn't refusing, it's adapting without losing your own voice. Some will say, the more expensive the paint, the better the work. Premium paints can be a pleasure to use, but they won't save a weak idea. A skilled artist can make cheap paint sing. An unskilled one can make premium paint look lifeless. I've also heard, if you can't draw people, you're not a real artist. Not true. Plenty of respected artists never touch the human figure at all, and their work is still in museums. Another common one, colors in a painting are just about the artist's taste. Color is more than, I like this shade. It's a tool to direct the eye, set the emotion, and even control how long someone looks at the piece. And finally, a painting is always about what's in it. Not necessarily. Sometimes the subject is just an excuse to explore light, rhythm, or the physical joy of moving paint around. There's this idea that training your eye means sitting through endless theory lectures and memorizing color wheels like a school exam. No, you can build visual literacy in ways that actually feel alive. One of the simplest tricks is to spend time with real paintings, not just photos of them. Photos flatten everything, kill the texture, and hide the subtle temperature shifts that make the original sing. Even if you don't live near a big museum, small local galleries, pop-up shows, even antique shops can teach you a lot. The point isn't just looking, it's slowing down enough to ask yourself, why does this part work? Why is my eye going here first? Another method? Look at bad art on purpose, not to mock it, but to figure out why it falls flat. Is the composition unbalanced? Is the color harmony broken? Does every area shout for attention at once? When you can explain why something doesn't work, you get better at making yours work. Also, copy, but with intent. This isn't about forging or tracing, it's about taking a master's composition, palette, or brushwork, and trying to reproduce it by hand. You'll find yourself asking, why did they put the darkest dark here? Why does the light feel warmer over there? It's like reverse engineering a great recipe. And don't limit yourself to your own medium. If you paint, study sculpture, it'll make you see form in 3 dimensions. If you work in oils, spend time looking at ink drawings. It will sharpen your sense of value without the distraction of color. Cross-pollination is one of the fastest ways to grow. One habit I swear by. Pick one element per week to watch for everywhere. Diagonals, repeated shapes, negative space, complementary colors. Suddenly you start seeing it in movie frames, street photography, even in how people arrange food on a plate. The more you spot it, the more natural it becomes in your own work. Don't underestimate film stills and photography for composition training. Pause a good movie and analyze the frame. Where's the main subject? How are the light and dark shapes arranged? Cinematographers are masters at leading your eye, and half of that transfers directly to painting. Another overlooked tool, sketch in ugly places. Airports, buses, waiting rooms. Environments where you don't have the perfect view force you to simplify and find the essentials. You start noticing gesture, proportion, rhythm, instead of getting lost in detail. And please train your visual memory. Next time you see something striking, a color in the sky, the shadow of a building, don't photograph it. Instead, later that day, try to paint or draw it from memory. It forces your brain to store and reconstruct visual information instead of outsourcing it to your phone. Even collecting reference images can be training if you do it actively. Don't just save a picture because it's pretty. Ask, do I love this for the color harmony, the subject, the way the edges are handled? Tag or sort them accordingly. Over time, you'll see patterns in what attracts you, and those patterns are the DNA of your style. And here's a weird one. Change your context. If you always look at paintings on a screen, print a few out small and carry them in your bag. If you always study large originals, shrink them down on your phone. Scale changes what you notice. Small formats reveal composition, large formats reveal surface and gesture. Most importantly, make it playful. Training your eye is not about memorizing rules so you can follow them. It's about feeding your brain enough good material so it starts making connections without you forcing it. The goal is to get to a point where you feel when something is off or when it clicks. And that feeling is built from thousands of quiet moments of looking, comparing, and asking why. There's something fascinating about how the same painting can feel like an entirely different piece, depending on when you see it in your life. And I don't just mean mood. I mean your brain literally rewires what you notice and how it lands. When you're young, you often focus on the obvious, the subject, the colors, maybe the wow factor. A bright sky, a dramatic figure, a funny little detail in the corner. It's like your eyes are picking the loudest voices in the room. You react to what's immediately rewarding. A painting is good because it's pretty, exciting, or impressive. And that's fine, we all start there. But later, you might come back to that same work and suddenly notice something you never saw before. Not because it wasn't there, but because you weren't ready to see it. Maybe you've been through loss, and suddenly the quiet, shadowed corner of the composition feels heavier, almost personal. Or maybe you've traveled, and a color palette you once ignored now clicks because you felt that kind of light on your skin. Life experience changes your filter. The painting doesn't change, you do, and your perception follows. That's why some pieces that once left you cold can later break your heart. Or the reverse. A painting you adored at 20 might feel naive at 40 because your own perspective has sharpened, and you're no longer seduced by surface charm alone. There's also a time of life factor in what you think the painting is about. As a student, you might read an urban street scene as simply busy, colorful, alive. Years later, after you've lived in a city, you might see the loneliness in it, the way the figures avoid each other's gaze, the small, dark shapes at the edges. Same brushstrokes, but a completely different story. And then there's the influence of what else you've seen since. If you've only ever looked at a handful of artworks, you're missing the invisible threads between them. The more you see, the more references your brain holds, and when you revisit a painting, you suddenly see the echoes. Oh, this light is pure Vermeer, or this rhythm in the composition feels like Japanese woodblock prints. Those connections deepen the experience. Your technical knowledge plays a role too. At first, you might not even register that the soft haze in the background is scumbled paint, or that the edge you love is lost and found on purpose. But once you've tried to paint something yourself and failed, you start to appreciate what's really going on under that surface. And, of course, your emotional state in the moment is like a lens filter. You can stand in front of the same painting 2 days in a row and have completely different reactions just because you slept badly, got good news, or argued with someone. On one day, a still life feels calm and meditative. On another, it feels static and suffocating. Even the environment where you see it matters. Under warm museum lighting, a blue might feel soft and deep. Under cold light, it can feel harsh and metallic. Crowded gallery, you rush past. Empty room, you sink into it. One of the most striking shifts happens when you start noticing the negative space, the parts of the painting where nothing happens. Younger eyes often skip over those areas, but with time, you start to see how they hold the whole composition together, how silence makes the music. And then there's the nostalgia factor. Revisiting a painting years later can trigger memories of where you were, who you were with, what life felt like then. The artwork becomes a time machine, but not to the time it was painted, to the time you first saw it. That personal layer becomes part of the work for you, even though it exists only in your head. This is why no one ever finishes looking at a good painting. It's not a one-time transaction, it's a relationship. Sometimes you drift apart, sometimes you fall in love all over again, and sometimes, without even realizing it, you grow into the parts of it you couldn't understand before. So the next time you find yourself thinking, I didn't like this painting before, but now I do, remember, the painting didn't suddenly get better. You just became a different viewer. And sometimes the change isn't in you at all. It's in everything around the painting. The lighting alone can transform it. Under warm museum lamps, the shadows melt and colors feel like honey. Under cold daylight, the same scene can turn sharp, almost metallic. Even the frame matters. A heavy, ornate gold can make a piece feel historical and formal, while a thin, black frame makes it feel modern and stripped down. Crowds can change it too. In a packed gallery, you're rushed, absorbing the work in stolen glances between people's shoulders. But see it in an empty room, and suddenly you notice the silence, the weight of the air, the way the painting breathes when no one else is looking. Sometimes the environment tells you as much about the art as the art tells you about itself.